President Zelensky of Ukraine held a nearly 4-hour press conference with the International Press Corps, and what stuck out the most to me was Zelensky's insistence that Ukraine will be victorious against the Russian military. It was exactly a year ago that the Russians launched an all-out assault from the north, from the east, and from the southern part of Ukraine. And President Zelensky highlighted how the Ukrainian forces managed, against all odds, and despite the consensus at the time, that Ukrainians were able to successfully repel the Russian forces from Kiev and eventually from parts of the northeastern part of Ukraine in the Kharkiv province. Specifically, Zelensky referred to the outpouring of European support. Poland has now sent Leopard 2 tanks, and Ukraine is expecting even more of these advanced main battle tanks to throw into the important battles that are ongoing right now in the Eastern Front in the Donbass region. And Zelensky, when he was asked to respond to President Macron of France's statement that Russia, quote, must not be crushed, Zelensky's response was that, good, we want European countries to start thinking of a Russian defeat and what will happen afterwards. So it seemed that Zelensky was very much in a positive mood that Ukraine, with sufficient military support from the West and from NATO, would be victorious against the Russian military. Another important takeaway from that press conference was that Zelensky said that in order to prevent World War III from taking place, Ukraine must be given the weapons to defeat Russia. The Ukrainian government just released a statement this morning calling this conflict the largest conventional war in Europe since World War II, and they pledged that they will continue to move towards victory against what they call Russian aggression and to continue to pursue full-fledged membership in the NATO military alliance and in the European Union. Just to give you a quick operational update on where the situation stands today, that city of Bakhmut continues to hold. Ukrainian defenders are fighting a very difficult and bloody battle in that city in the eastern Donbass region against the Russian private military contractors, the Wagner Group, and Russian elite airborne units, also referred to as the VDV. The Russians are attempting to encircle Bakhmut from the north and the south, but so far, those critical supply lines from the western approaches of the city remain open, and that's what's allowed the Ukrainians to continue to hold that city despite the best efforts of the Russian military. Now, according to UK Defense Intelligence, the Russian strategy has now narrowed down following significant casualties since September, focusing on consolidating and their control, the Kremlin's control over the Donbass region in the east and over the southern areas that they've occupied near the Crimean Peninsula. The Russian military has made slow progress and it's been extremely costly. The Russian military is trying to etch out a tactical victory in the Donbass region in the Eastern Front. The situation for the Ukrainian defenders of the city of Bakhmut is growing increasingly desperate. We do have reports that Wagner private military contractors have made fresh gains in their attempt to encircle Bakhmut from the north and from the southwest, making it much more difficult for Ukrainian military to resupply the defenders of that city. The Russians have been attempting to capture Bakhmut for months now, and the Ukrainian defenders have inflicted significant casualties on both the elite Russian paratroopers and the Wagner forces that have been attempting to capture that city of Bakhmut. Also in the Donbass region, there are intelligence reports from the Western sources that the Russian military may be preparing a new offensive in the city of Volhedar. That is also in the Donbass region. This is an area where the Russians have sent multiple human wave attacks only to be repelled by the Ukrainian defenders. According to the latest UK Defense Intelligence report, those attacks have led to significant casualties amongst the elite Russian naval infantry units, particularly the 155th Russian Marine Unit. And according to the Intel report, that has degraded some of Russia's most elite units And that will lead, likely, to the backfill of all these casualties with inexperienced conscripts. The Russians have conscripted hundreds of thousands of troops that they are now throwing into the Eastern Front in an attempt to regain some of that momentum after previous successful Ukrainian counterattacks. So the situation going critical for the Ukrainians in the city of Bakhmut. Here in Kiev, there has not been any Russian missile strikes or kamikaze drone strikes. The situation is growing increasingly desperate for the Ukrainian defenders in that city. Russian Wagner private military contractors have reportedly made further gains, cutting off critical lines of supply to the city of Bakhmut overnight. The Russian plan here is to attempt to encircle that city. They are attacking from the eastern approaches from the city and from the north and from the south. It seems that the Russians military made advances from the southwest area, and they are steadily putting that city in a tight vice. Now, since the war began a year ago, the Ukrainians were able to counterattack successfully along a number of fronts, most notably in the city of Kherson in the south and in the Kharkiv region. In the east, it's been a brutal slog, both for the Russians and for the Ukrainians. Both sides have suffered tremendous casualties, with estimates of upwards of 60,000 Russian soldiers killed for the past year, with an overall count of 200,000.